Hey friends, consumer attorney Rob Nahum here. I wanted to continue talking about Corona debt. Um, Look, to each their craft, and my craft is debt and the impact debt has on working people. So I'm going to keep talking about debt. So there's been a lot of activity around the economy, right? Around stimulating the economy, and a lot of strategies and philosophies on what to do to blunt the blow that the Corona economy is going to have on companies, on our government, on people. And as far as I can see, the general strategy seems to be good old-fashioned trickle-down economics, right? Let's give billions and trillions of dollars to industry and to corporations to keep them moving and keep everything happening, and that will all flow down to regular working families. The only exception is some crumbs that the government has thrown to working people. $1,200 per qualifying adult, $500 for your children, $600 here and there for unemployment, all totally inadequate to meet the needs of working people who have been hurt by the Corona economy. There's an idea that's been floated around before the Corona economy that is more relevant now than ever, that would really go a long way towards helping to bolster the economy, helping to mitigate the impact of debt on working people, and help to stabilize a lot of folks as they navigate through this. And that's the idea of forgiving student debt. The federal government is the primary lender of student loans, right? These days, people who take student loans aren't borrowing from banks. For the most part, the way they did back in my day. They're borrowing directly from the federal government. So a large portion of the student loan money and debt that's out there now is money that's owed directly to the federal government. So this is something, student loan forgiveness is something that could be done in a way that bypasses the normal crony issues that face big legislation, like with the impact of banks and everyone trying to get their piece out of some big piece of legislation. This is something that can be done because it's money owed for the most part to the federal government. I will try and stay out of the politics of the issue, but I'll address some of the objections that people have to the idea of forgiving student loans. For example, there's the idea of socialism, right? Well, we can't be socialist. Well, there's that old saying that in a foxhole there's no atheists. Well, in a foxhole maybe there's no socialists, right? Because there's lots of money being spent around in a way that would be socialist. For example, sending $1,200 checks to every American. That's socialist, right? Giving farm subsidies to farmers. That's socialist. So I think that's kind of a bunk argument that forgiving student loans would teeter us towards socialism. So put that aside. There's the argument of moral hazard, right? Moral hazard is, if we're just forgiving student loans, there's no incentive for people to work harder and to take less risk when the government's just doling out money. Well, that argument seems to only hold true when it's dealing with folks, regular people. Corporations don't seem to worry much about their moral hazard. So I think the moral hazard argument is a bunk argument. Not to mention, the real moral hazard here is in how student loans have gotten to this point. So, in the year 2010, the total outstanding student loan debt was about $833 billion. About $833 billion in 2010. 10 years later, that amount was up to $1.6 trillion. It doubled in 10 years, right? It doubled in 10 years. Something stinks here. Something is not working right. We're in a 10-year period. You double the amount of student loans. We have a runaway costs of higher education. That's the moral hazard. The moral hazard is that we've done nothing to stem the increasing cost of higher education. The increases in the cost of higher education have outpaced the increase in cost of everything else in our society. It's just college education that's so special that we've just let the cost of it run away. Maybe the reason we let that happen is because the federal government's been out there lending as much money as 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids are willing to borrow. That's the moral hazard, is that we've let this bubble inflate up to $1.6 trillion, right? So let's recognize that that was the moral hazard, and let's do something about it, corrective now, by forgiving student loans. Okay, I'm going to end on the efficacy of this. Well, it's not just a matter of forgiving student loans because it's the right thing to do because of the moral hazard. We forgive student loans because it's an effective thing to do. The demographic that's going to be most impacted by forgiveness of student loans is going to be millennials. Millennials are going to suffer tremendously during the corona economy because the job losses are going to be extraordinary. Millennials were ill-equipped going into the corona economy. They were ill-equipped because they didn't have enough of a war chest of cash should they lose their jobs to be able to continue living their lives and consuming, right? We're a consumer-based economy, right? The reason we're going to hurt so badly during Corona is because everybody's staying home and not spending money, and everyone's losing their jobs and has no money to spend. So if we forgive $1.6 trillion in student loans, that is a huge shot in the arm to the economy by putting cash in the hands of the people who spend it. Cash in the hands of people who spend it. Instead of giving money to the last link in the chain, right? Instead of giving bailouts to corporations, which are the last link in this consumer chain, give it to people who are the first link in the consumer chain, and that's the consumers, so they can again go and put that money and spend it back into the economy. So forgiving student loans is the right thing to do. It's a smart thing to do. It's an effective thing to do, and it could really help to bolster our way through the corona economy. Take care of each other. Love and light.